Today is going to be about fueling the 21st century female. So what I'd like to talk about is things like body image and how that influences how we eat and how we train. I want to impress on you as well, a lot of people, when we talk about performance, they think we're talking about specifically athletes, but this is going to be for everyone. This is for you if you are an athlete, if you're training hard, if you're a gym bunny, if you're a stay-at-home mum, whatever you do, I want this to be focused for everyone. So first thing, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about female studies. We don't actually have as much research on female sports nutrition as we do for men, so this is going to be a massive thing I'd just like to talk about. We're going to have a look at body image and the importance of having muscle mass, and then under fueling and all about calories in and out, and then what foods do we need to have and why should we have them. So first thing, a little bit about me. Beck said that she's so sporty when she was younger, which is fantastic. I was the complete opposite. When I was younger, I was super lazy. I would sit on the sofa, play video games, watch TV, and eat so much food. I was the person that would eat a whole bag of cookies in one go and then go for more. I did like to do a little bit of sport. I tried running, but I would go on a 10-minute run and then come home and reward myself with a huge bowl of creamy pesto pasta or something. So obviously, I didn't really have any success losing the weight I had. When I got to university, I changed my mindset and I thought, hey, I need to sort myself out because being overweight, I was 97 kilos. Being overweight makes life incredibly challenging. I would get hot all the time. Clothes never fit. I would go to shops and try on clothes and just hate going and trying clothes on because it was just awful. I couldn't run to the end of my street. I wouldn't want to go walking. Just everything's so difficult. So at university, decided to lose a lot of weight. I used to go to the Easy Gym and go on a cross trainer in a hoodie and sweatpants. And I cut out all carbs because I thought that that was the way to go. Once I did lose a lot of weight, I became a personal trainer straight out of university because I wanted to help other women realize that they were in control of their weight and how they look. I started CrossFit in 2016 and realized I needed to fuel my body. So I'd done a few years of just drastically cutting all my carbs because I thought that that was the healthy thing to do. You know, I'd see someone eating bread and be like, oh, bread. But it's, you know, if you're training, you need to be fueling with the right things, which we'll come to learn more about soon. And then I started working with PH Nutrition in August 2020. So female-specific performance in sport. One of the things I've noticed since I started working with PH is the lack of research specifically on women, and not just specifically on women, on trained women. Back in the 1870s, there were studies which dictated that if women and men tried to compete at the same level, women would not be able to keep up with men and that they would suffer, this is a direct quote from a study, nervous collapse. That is what they thought of women training. So you can see why it's only been recently that we've actually got more studies coming in. So we're very underrepresented in studies on nutrition and performance. I think it's 37% of studies are specifically on females. So that's a very low number. It's not even 50%. And all the focus is on medical health issues and obesity, which of course is super important, but we don't have those studies on people that train and people that perform just the same way we do as health conditions. There's that lack of performance focus. So the first thing I want to talk about is one of the reasons I think there isn't so much research on women and nutrition is because I think we have such a hang up in society on women's body image, and having muscle for a woman is very different to a man having muscle, or we think it is. So I want you to take a look at these two magazine covers, Women's Health and Men's Health. And I would just like you to focus your attention onto the kind of main chunk. So for the Women's Health magazine, we have slimmer, fitter, and sexier. And eat, drink, and still shrink. I don't know why shrinking is a good thing, but apparently that's what we want to do. We want to be shrinking. And apparently if you are slimmer, then you are sexier. So, we already have these hang-ups, and then you see this out of the corner of your eye walking down the street and you think, I need to shrink. If you look at the men's health version, we have stronger mind and stronger body. I want a stronger mind and a stronger body. I think that is something that not just men should be aiming for, but women should be aiming for. We want to be strong in our everyday lives. So the problem is we associate, maybe subconsciously, smaller with healthier or more desirable. We tend to have negative associations with any kind of gain. So whenever we step on the scales, even if we're at a good weight, we're at maintenance level, we feel happy with our body, if you see that scale number go up, you probably get that little bit of anxiety. I remember when last year, I did a lean gain study to try and purposely gain muscle. And even though I knew I wasn't going to blow up and turn into the Hulk, I knew I was going to gain a little bit of weight, but I still dreaded getting on the scales and seeing the weight go up. And I hear this from so many women. Always, when I first started out, I used to hear it a lot more, but I hear women telling me that if they eat more protein, or they try and train with weights, or they try and gain muscle mass, they don't want to get bulky. That word bulky haunts me. I hear it so much. So I want you to take a look at the woman on the left. This is Heidi Powell. She, I believe, has one of those bodies that is just, she looks incredible. But I think you may look at a woman like this on social media and think that she had to restrict herself to get a body like this because she is very lean. Muscle gain is not about becoming the Rock and getting bulky. This is what muscle gain looks like. And this takes, to get a figure like this and to have that strength, takes years of not restricting your food, but increasing your calories, learning your body, and eating at maintenance. All these people that you see, fitness models, sportswomen, these people that have these strong physiques, they have not, I can promise you, they have not restricted their calories. They haven't cut out all carbs. They are eating at maintenance and they are training hard. They have had to build that body. We have this difference between restricting and building. So let's have a talk about the benefits of gaining muscle. You are not going to look bulky. You're going to have a higher basal metabolic rate, which we'll talk more about later. This means you're going to have more energy throughout the day. You're going to be burning more calories at rest. We're going to have better posture because our muscles are going to hold us up better. So this is going to help us avoid slouching at work. It's going to avoid lower back pain. We're going to be less susceptible to injury because our joints can handle a little bit more, because with more muscle comes more strength. And we're going to have that better body composition because we have a higher basal metabolic rate. We have better posture. We move well. We probably train a little bit harder because we have that strength available. We're going to be burning more fat at rest. So our body composition, the amount of lean gain, lean muscle mass and body fat percentage is going to be better balanced. The problem is people associate higher muscle with being bulky and all this. But what being bulky really is, could be having a higher body fat percentage. And we don't just want to not have that higher body fat percentage for vanity reasons. A higher body fat percentage leads to a lower basal metabolic rate. So we have a lack of energy. We're going to be burning less calories at rest. And we're going to be more likely to store excess calories as body fat. We're going to have worse posture. This is going to lead to back pain and slouching, kyphosis, things like this. We're going to have more pressure on our joints, so we're more likely to get knee pain and injury. So if you feel like you've put on a bit of weight, sometimes you feel, oh, my knees are a bit painful. The more pressure we have on our joints, the more painful our knees are. If we lose a kilo of weight, it takes 3 kilos of pressure off your joints. And then, of course, with a higher body fat percentage, we have higher risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So I don't want to scare you with all those horrible things, but increasing your muscle mass and lowering your body fat percentage through a good maintenance diet with lots of nutritious food and hard training is going to help you avoid all of these things on this list here. I want you to take a look at the women on the left. We have women with 3 very different bodies. So the top is Emma Coburn. She is a world record holder. We have Matty Rogers, who is an Olympic weightlifter. And at the bottom, we just have your everyday woman who loves to go to the gym because she enjoys going. They all have different bodies, but I can tell you the one thing they have in common is that they eat enough food. Food is energy. Every single cellular process within your body requires energy. If you're not eating enough, your body doesn't have the tools it needs to carry out just the basics of everyday life. Forget training on top of that. Let's think no more restriction. So how do we feed ourselves enough food? Just have a look here at this graph. We have your basal metabolic rates. We spoke about that before. I'm going to use an example of a girl called Emma. So Emma has a basal metabolic rate of 1,500 calories. She's active throughout the day. So this means that her NEAT, her non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is another 500 calories of expenditure on top. So your NEAT is anything moving around, fidgeting, waving your hands, walking up the stairs, walking to the shop, anything that isn't exercise. We can burn so many calories just by being on our feet all day. You might have one of those friends who fidgets a lot and moves around all the time. They're probably very lean because they have a high NEAT. If we are trying to lose weight, a great way of increasing calories and increasing calorie expenditure without lowering your calories you eat is by increasing your NEAT. Once we have that, we have the thermic effect of food. So we're going to add on another 150 calories for this. This is literally the energy your body burns digesting your food. Some foods will need more energy to digest than others. So for example, protein has a higher thermic effect than carbs and fats. And then at the end there, we have your exercise activity thermogenesis, or EAT. Emma, for example, she likes to weightlift. So at the end of the day, she does an hour's of weightlifting and she's burned another 500 calories. So you can see that her maintenance, just to maintain her weight of maybe 70 kilos, is 2,650 calories a day. And she is just an active woman who likes to train once a day, but she's on her feet the majority of the day. She needs to have this energy balance in order to support all the things going on in her body and to train in her sport. So this applies to you, whether you are an elite swimmer, an elite weightlifter, or just a shift worker on their feet all day. It's so important to fuel your body for the work required. So what do we need to fuel with? The first thing is protein. So again, another thing I hear is people worrying about eating too much protein and getting bulky. It's not going to happen. Protein is the building blocks of our muscles and the rest: hair, skin, nails. Your protein makes up your DNA and your RNA, your genetic code. So down to your genetics, you are made of protein. It is absolutely vital. Without protein, we can get deficiencies which lead to fatigue, health complications such as anemia, low energy levels, feeling sluggish, and that basal metabolic rate coming down. How much protein should you eat? The recommended daily allowance is 0.9 grams per kilo of body weight, but this is rather low. We recommend closer to 1.5 grams per kilo of body weight, maybe into the 2 grams per kilo of body weight. If you're actively trying to build lean muscle, we would maybe say 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight. Will you get bulky eating protein? No, you will not. There are lots of studies on feeding people with protein. One study fed people 4.4 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, and they didn't actually find out what happened in terms of any problems or health problems from that much protein, because people physically could not eat that much protein, as I'm sure you will understand from all the gastrointestinal effects it produced. So one female study with protein took female physique athletes, 2 groups. One group had 2.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, and the other group had 0.9 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. They were both in a slight surplus. So where we had those maintenance calories, they were eating a little bit extra. So they will have gained a little bit of weight because excess energy leads to excess weight. However, they both had the same training schedule. Both groups increased their body mass, but the higher protein group, the group eating 2.5 grams per kilo of body weight, actually decreased their body fat percentage and improved their muscle mass, while the lower protein group gained both body fat and muscle. So, we've talked about protein, let's talk about carbs. Carbs get a really bad rap. When I did my, when I first lost all my weight, I just cut out carbs. The only reason that worked for me was because it was an overall deficit. So I lost a lot of weight. However, as soon as I started doing any intense exercise, I absolutely bombed. Carbohydrates are not your enemy. I want you to read that loud and clear. We need carbohydrates for any activity we're doing. So I know this picture might look, it's got a lot of long words. Don't worry too much about it. All I want you to look at is our three different, we've got three women here. One of them is going super fast. She's sprinting, the red circle. This is our fast energy system, which we use first. We have our woman in green. This is our lactate energy system, which kicks in after that initial energy system. And then we have our woman in blue. This is your slow energy system. This is the one we might have when we're running a marathon or doing a long cycle ride. We have different energy systems. We might be using all of them at once or some at different points. But the only thing I'd like you to look at is the word glycolysis in the middle. So very important to see that glycolysis relates to glucose in the bloodstream. Where do we get glucose from? We get it from the breakdown of carbohydrates in our body. If you do not have some form of glucose coming in, then we will not be able to perform in our sport. Last thing, we have our fats. So fats, again, another thing that gets a bad rap. I think just most food gets some kind of bad rap these days. Fats do not make you get fat. Fats make up your hormones. Obviously, we learn a lot in Bex's talk about the menstrual cycle, how important fats and omega 3s and 6s are for your hormones and your immune response. Fats are vital in our stress response and recovery. So we spoke about recovery before. If you do not eat enough fats, that stress response is not going to work as well in your body. Fats have an inflammatory and anti-inflammatory response for immune system function. So these are all very important in terms of your training. You need to be able to recover from the training you are doing. They are also needed for the digestion of certain vitamins. So for example, vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat soluble. So we need fats to help digest those vitamins. So fats are very important if you are even if you're just going to the gym, you're a regular exerciser, you don't have to be an athlete, you still need to be eating fats for that recovery. So very briefly at PH Nutrition, what we recommend is, obviously I've told you all about proteins and carbs and fats for your everyday life, for your training. We talk about using a hand guide if you don't want to get your measuring scale out and be logging all your food in MyFitnessPal. We have protein. We say have a palm of protein. Obviously, for a larger woman or a larger man, they might have a larger palm, so that portion is always very correct. We have palm of protein, a fist of vegetables, a cupped hand of carbs, and a thumb of fats. And then we might say if you're training, you need a little bit more energy in there. So I would say maybe if you've just done a training session, we would have 2 cupped hands of carbs. And then what type of training should I be doing? So if you do want to increase that muscle mass and you want to perform, the type of training you're doing is also super important. So we talk about hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is increasing the size of your muscle fibers. If we want to increase this, we're looking at sets of 8 to 12, where you hit either a failure or you might have 1 to 2 reps in reserve on that weight that you're lifting. So maybe I would get to the 10th or 11th rep, and then from there, it would start to get very challenging. And then strength is increasing the capacity of the recruitment of those muscle fibers. So building strength, we want to do sets of 4 to 8 where you hit failure between that rep range. So strength training is always less reps and much heavier weights. So in terms of gaining muscle for women, you might think, oh, well, I'm a woman, it's harder for me to gain muscle than a man. It's not completely untrue. So in terms of muscle growth rate, they've actually seen that there's not really any difference in the relative growth rate between genders. So you have absolutely no restrictions just being a woman, you can still gain a decent amount of muscle. Going from untrained, so if you have never done any exercise before in your life, and then you start thinking about building muscle, you start doing some training, the growth rate of our upper body muscles is higher in women than it is in men. So another common thing I hear people tell me is, oh, well, women don't have the same upper body strength. if you commit to it, your rate of growth for your upper body muscles is actually going to be a bit higher than a man's. And obviously we have, as we heard from Bex before about the menstrual cycle, estrogen can have anabolic effects in muscle tissue. So this can actually, there are some studies that tell us we might be able to build muscle a little bit better in the presence of estrogen. Women are more resistant to fatigue, so it takes you longer to fatigue in a workout than a man would, especially in our leg muscles. We have a lot more type 1 fibers than men, so we have a little bit better endurance. We recover faster overall than men. And so overall, training is still going to have the same effect on a woman, on her lean muscle tissue, as it will on a man. So there's no reason why you can't gain a little bit of muscle and reap the benefits. Okay, any questions? Let me